Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the next breakfast briefing given by Represent PA. I'm Christine Jacobs, and I'm the Executive Director of Represent. I'm so proud to have today's session because we've done a lot of work and we've been trying to educate voters across Pennsylvania on why we need to have a Democratic majority, what difference it would make, and talking about a lot of different issues. But you know, one of the core tenets of Represent is the fact that women need a chance. Women need extra oomph. Women need to know that they're supported by other women. And that's why Represent exists. I'm really thrilled to have some of the strong women that Represent is supported on the call with us today. Representative Donna Bullock is from Philadelphia. And she this year is now the chair of the Pennsylvania Black Legislative Caucus. And she's co-sponsors a number of bills. Her work on gun violence prevention is very strong. We also have Jen O'Mara on the call. Jen is now the chair of the Southeast Pennsylvania delegation, and she's working on a number of healthcare initiatives. And for any of those who have watched to see the distribution of vaccines across Pennsylvania, you know that Jen is working hard for Delaware County. And Melissa Shusterman is the one who suggested this call today. Melissa she represents a district I used to live in Chester County, and she's on the policy and judiciary committees, and she's the vice chair of the Southeast delegation. Why does Represent exist? What is different in 2021? I like to tell people that I'm very old, and in the 1970s, when I got out of college, that I thought that by the time we got to this age, by the time I had grandchildren, women would have equal rights in this country. Women would have equal stature. And yet Pennsylvania is one of 5 states that have never had a woman governor or woman senator. One of 5 states in the entire country that has never done that. That can't be. And we go back, our history goes back to the founding constitution in our state. But you go back to when women achieved the right to vote in 1920. And since then, we've never had a woman, and we've only ever had 9 women in Congress in total. Pennsylvania ranks 31st in the number of women in our state legislature. We have 14 women in the Senate and 59 in the House. That's it. That's 14 out of 50, and that's 59 out of 203. We made progress in 2016 and 2018, so we moved from 40th to 31st, but we made no change in 2020 because of a lot of down ballot race issues. That's not good. And there are only 142 women in the 2 chambers in Congress, and that's out of 534. So we rank 67th in the whole world in terms of our share of women in our national legislature, 67th. We're behind countries like Iran, we're behind countries like Chile, we're behind an awful lot of countries. And I like this comment that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And nothing describes that better than thinking about the fact that talking about equal pay, talking about equal status does not happen unless women are in the room. Now, there are some discussions periodically, all male discussions about abortion and about women's health care. There are just all male discussions about education. But how robust are these discussions if women are not in the room? And if women cannot be speaking for other women? Our Represent women are very active in Harrisburg. We didn't elect pansies. We did not elect women who are just sitting there who look nice in pictures. You'll see on this call, they look fabulous in pictures, but that's not why we elected them. When Represent goes through its process of analyzing who we're going to endorse, we read through their positions on major issues. And we make sure that they are strong leaders and have strong positions on issues. We also make sure that they're activists. We make sure that they're not going there just to sit and, Madeleine Dean talks about when she first, Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, most recently of the impeachment trial, Madeleine Dean, she talks about when she first got to Harrisburg as a state rep. And she was told, okay, for your first 2 terms, you just got to be quiet because you don't understand how things work. So don't say anything. Don't disrupt anybody. Just sit and listen, and gradually you'll move up with seniority. But don't make any waves. Represent elects women who make waves. And represent elects women who know who they are. They know what, they're not running for office to be somebody. They're running for office to do something. And from the minute they hit Harrisburg, they're trying to do something. And that's why we're really proud of them. Equal pay for equal work is a minimum that should have been expected in 2021. Minimum. And yet it does not exist. So as I mentioned, we have Melissa Shusterman of Chester County, we have Representative Jen O'Mara of Delaware County, and we have Representative Donna Bullock of Philadelphia. Yeah, they're all from Southeast Pennsylvania, but they had co-sponsored this legislation and decided to have them all on. So fascinated to have you here. The time is yours. Tell us what's not equal in Pennsylvania and what you're doing about it and how hard the work is.
Thank you, Christine, for that wonderful introduction. And you know, I often like to share just a slightly different experience as a Black woman in the State House. Those numbers have been even more discouraging in many ways. When I started in 2015, there were 9 Black women in the House, and Christine knows my favorite statistics. There were 13 white men named Mike. 9 Black women and 13 white men named Mike. That number remained consistent for most of my time. I have not counted the mics this year since we've been just got sworn in, but I will soon do that so I can update that statistic. I know we lost a few mics, gained a few others, but we still only have 9 Black women. And what that means for me, and I've often shared this conversation and have most recently talked about it more publicly, is that that conversation that Madeline Dean had about being quiet went a little different for me. That conversation came from a white male mentor who I looked up to and leaned over to me after watching one of my Black female colleagues speak at the rostrum and talk passionately about the constituents in her district. And he leaned into me and said, I like you because you're not like the other Black woman. You're not loud like the other Black woman. And it really, really got under my skin because this was not a compliment at all. And it was a warning to be silent. It was a warning to not express myself as a Black woman, to not show any passion, and for more importantly, that I didn't have a right to be angry about what was happening in Harrisburg, how legislation did not positively impact my community, how legislation in Harrisburg each week that I came home did not make my Black boys any safer, or the kids that they play with in North Philadelphia any safer. And that how legislation in Harrisburg continued to keep women behind. And when we talk about equal pay, we also need to talk about minimum wage and why we can't pass minimum wage. Minimum wage workers in Pennsylvania, 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women. And if you don't see yourself in that space, because you don't think you're a minimum wage worker, and Jen and Melissa have heard our colleagues say that minimum wage workers are teenagers. Minimum wage workers are moms and wives just earning a little bit of cash on the side so she can go shopping with her friends. Minimum wage workers are not, in their mind, women, head of households, putting food on the table, which is who minimum wage workers are. And then you don't think about equal pay. Because again, you don't think women belong in the workplace. And if they do, they're only there to earn some extra cash on the side. And when we talk about this table and being on the menu, the other thing that women do when we get to that table, we pull up a chair for sis. We pull up a chair for the next woman to come, and we hold your seat till you get there. And while you're on your way, we might text you and say what you want on the, this is the menu, what you want me to order for you so that it's here when you get here. We don't just make sure that we order for ourselves. We take care of everybody else when we are at the table, and we try to bring as many seats along with us. We'll add chairs, we'll add tables. We make sure voices are heard as women, and that's the work, at least Democratic women, that is the work that we do. And so when we look at equal pay, yes, Pennsylvania has an Equal Pay Act from 60, 50,
57.
50, thank you. But it doesn't work. There are loopholes, employers get around it. You know, it's hard to prove equal pay discrimination. You're not able to share salaries. You're not able to get the information you need to prove that you're not being paid the same as your white male counterpart, the same as the guy at the desk next to you, the same as the guy at the cash register next to you. Because this is the other thing about equal pay. It is real across every single industry, every single career choice job, from the school bus driver to the doctors, teachers, wherever. In Pennsylvania, this number is real. Number is real. Let me tell you, women typically make 79% of the median annual wages. And for Black women and Latinas, that's only 68% and 56% respectively of the wages of white men for the same work, same time frame. When we look at women of color, and particularly Black women, and this is some statistics from the Economic Policy Institute, Black women in jobs, I mean, I'm going to talk in a little bit of context of right now in COVID and equal pay, because this is where, I mean, we've talked forever in the last year or so about COVID and the disparities and how COVID has exposed all these disparities and inequities. We knew these disparities existed before COVID. And as women, we've experienced those disparities and inequities before COVID. As Black women, you couldn't tell me about these disparities because I already know. And the last thing I want to do is come out of this pandemic with another report about some disparities I already experience every single day. We don't need another report, another study. We need some action. But what we know is that Black women that are in jobs critical to COVID-19 recovery, Black women who were essential workers, and women in generally who served as essential workers, were not treated as such. They were treated as expendable humans, not given paid sick leave, not given time to care for their loved ones, not given some type of hazard pay for putting their lives at risk so you can get your food delivered to your home, putting their lives at risk so your Amazon packages arrive on time, putting their lives at risk so that we can all be treated when we go to the hospital. Black women in those spaces were paid somewhere between 11 to 27% less than white men. Black women, doctors, nurses, teachers, childcare workers, it did not matter. They made less than white men in those same jobs. Few numbers. When it comes to surgeons, very respected medical field, white men on average, if you base their salary on hourly wage, $63.41 per hour. Black women surgeons, $46.59 per hour. For registered nurses, white men on average make $34.87. Black women make $28.74. And then when it comes to fields that are typically seen as women-dominated careers, childcare workers. White men on average make $15.21, while Black women make $12.41, almost $3 less per hour on average from white men. And as a cashier at your local grocery store, your supermarket, an area again where women, and particularly women of color, are disproportionately represented. White men make $12.91 on average, while Black women make $10.82. This is not acceptable. And as women, and Black women in particular, who came to the polls last year, who are every bit the backbone of every movement, particularly for the Democratic Party, we have been there. We have been behind, and in many times in front of the movements that push our values forward. We deserve to be paid equal pay for equal work. I'm so honored to be co-sponsoring this bill with two amazing women who I've seen come into the House in the last couple of years, and just like, I don't care if I'm a freshman, I'm here, I'm doing the work. And that is because Represent, like Christine says, has not hesitated about asking who they are endorsing. And because of them, I'm honored to be one of your first endorsements in your first class. But the work you have done has brought me a whole squad of women, strong, powerful women, to work with me, to push and advance ideals so that I can go home from week to week to Harrisburg and be a little bit encouraged by the work that we've done. So I can go home and say, you know what? We will get the bills done to make my boys safer in Philadelphia. We will get the work that is necessary so that my neighbor is paid the same wage as anybody else on her job. We will get the work done so that the schools in Philadelphia are not making our children sick. And we will get the work done to make sure we are not just putting out another report with some more statistics about inequities that we live every single day, and I don't need anybody to tell me about it again. Thank you, Christine and Represent, for all the work that you have done, and for everyone that's on this call. I always make my pitch: support Represent as much as you can, because this is what you're supporting. This is the work that happens. The leadership that you support. Let me tell you, 5 years ago, you supported 3 women to go to the State House. Those 3 women are myself. I am now the chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. My colleague, Leanne Kruger, who is now leading our House Democratic Campaign Committee. And our amazing leader of the Pennsylvania House Democratic Caucus, my sister rep from the beginning, Leader Joanna McClinton. We were your first endorsements, and we are all in positions of leadership because of the squad you brought with us. That we are because of them, we are because of you, and Represent. I can't be any more internally grateful for that work. And because of that work, we will also get equal pay before our granddaughters go to work. Okay, that's the goal here. We will get equal pay, and this is a great piece of legislation. And I'm going to pass it on to Melissa with the Zoom mic. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Donna, too. You make me cry, but you also inspire me, and I hope we're inspiring others on this call, because this is why we do this work. We're seeing some results, but we got to get to the majority.
Oh, no, it's so true. Representative Donna Bullock brings up so many important issues, and especially as a Black woman, and the expectation there. But there is expectation as women in Harrisburg, and I have to thank Represent that they're bringing along women that refuse to just sit there and not expose some of the inconsistencies in Harrisburg. So what I'm seeing surrounding women and women of color is that we were in the minority, and across the aisle, my colleagues, though kind and sweet, aren't voting for women. So we have to kind of change the narrative that it's not good enough just to support a woman. You have to see her stance on choice, her stance on healthcare, her stance on minimum wage, her stance on equal pay. This is critical because there are a lot of women that look like me across the aisle, but I've yet to see any of them vote or put forth legislation that would advance women. So I don't want to become a sociologist here to kind of figure out why these women are so adamant on not progressing women. Maybe they're part of a group or that applauds them for not doing that. But I view this particular issue holistically. We have to value women's work. The pandemic, as Donna mentioned, shows once again that if someone comes into my district to caretake one of my seniors in their home, they're put at risk. There's no help with transportation. They might have to walk a mile from the bus stop after being on the train. There is no help when it comes to childcare. And this entire system really sets someone up to fail completely. And when we look at equal pay, we have to look at every level. Over 2.5 million women left the workforce. And that is at every level, not because they were like, oh, gee, I'm just going to stay home during the pandemic. They left it for a variety of reasons. They were caretaking their loved ones, maybe within their house in a multi-generational house. They were staying home and helping their children navigate the digital environment of school. And in this process, we lost women in the managerial level. We lost VPs of large companies. We lost women cashiers. We lost women childcare workers, every level of work. And that is going to really create a larger gap when it comes to pay disparity. Because if you have suddenly a gap of all these women and they are having a hard time getting back to work, it is hard to bring their salaries up to the same level as a white man. And I must say, there are companies that do a great job of that, but they're still not solving the issue of childcare, paid leave, all the other issues that Donna laid out for us. And so this issue is just one issue in a bucket that we need to fight for. And what's frustrating, I'll be very blunt, in Harrisburg, people get outraged all the time across the aisle, but they never see the dots that connect work, women's work, to it being to money. They just assume women kind of work. They work because they're empathetic. That's why they work with children. That's why they work with the sick and the elderly. But if women are not paid equally, they're possibly losing anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. That money means retirement. Why would women not want to retire someday? Oh, are they going to be taken care of by a man? This is the tradition. We're still living in the 50s when it comes to the assumptions of women and work. And as a woman who was a single parent, who commuted, who accessed before care, school, after care, and then a college age student would pick up my son from that and take him home. I never in my life paid someone less than $15 an hour. I couldn't get someone willing to do that work. So I don't understand why grown-ups going to work should get paid less. So that is my sort of rant for the morning, because I'm incredibly angry that we can't right this wrong, especially when the pandemic showed that we need people to show up, from grocery store workers to care workers, and we should give them a livable wage. And for women, we need to give them equal pay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Well, I guess it's my turn now. Good morning, everyone. It's always great to be here. And I would also like to thank Represent was one of the first groups that endorsed me and believed that a 28-year-old woman with no political experience could be a good state representative. And I want to share a little bit about why equal pay is so important to me. Donna really hit a lot of really important points. And one of the ones that she mentioned is that there's a belief that women don't work minimum wage jobs. But for my mother, that was a reality. When I was 13, my dad passed away, and my mom, who was now a single mother of 3 children, hadn't worked in 15 years. And she had a high school diploma and was struggling to find a job that allowed her to make, to provide for us. She was very fortunate in that after months of searching, she got hired as a school bus driver in Upper Darby. And because that was a union job, it gave her decent wages and benefits. Prior to that, she was only finding minimum wage jobs. But even on that income that she had, she wasn't able to afford childcare. So at the age of 13, I started taking care of my brothers who were 10 and 2. And we're very close now because of that time we spent together. But it really, it impacted the experience I had as a kid. I didn't get to go out with my friends after school or stay in school to do student council work, which I was always a part of. I had to go home and make sure my brothers got home from school, pick up my little brother from our neighbor and start homework and dinner. And so I understand the challenges, even though I'm not a mother myself yet, that single moms face. And it really shaped my positions and my policy ideas as I grew into an adult. When I got elected in Harrisburg, I was the youngest female Democrat that ever got elected. I still am, even though now I'm 31. And I was often called kiddo or young lady by my male colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And it really bugged me. And I started replying back like, hey, old man, how you doing? Because usually they're old men saying that to me. And no offense, I love old men. But I don't think any of us want to be quantified by our age and gender. And when they would look at me, I would say that. And I think I sort of had some light bulbs go off for them. I'll never forget the first time I got up to speak on the floor. It was 3 months into my first session, my first term. Like Donna said, we're sort of told not to talk at the beginning and to sit back and listen. But the majority chair of the Veterans and Emergency Preparedness Committee had got up and said, we didn't need to save general assistance for disabled veterans because our veterans are doing great and they don't need the extra help. And because of my experience with my husband, who's a disabled veteran, I got up and I basically lost it. I called him a liar I said it was a misnomer, what he was saying, and I challenged him. And the next time I got back to Harrisburg, 4 days later, I had one of our caucus staffers come to my office and say that I had to go apologize to that member of the House, or else they were going to quote unquote end me. And so without the support of my own caucus, I had to go find that person and apologize. I will tell you, I didn't really apologize. I told him I was sorry for how I made him feel and basically gave him what they would call a snowflake apology. And he was pissed, and he did try to do a lot of things to end my career. He wasn't successful. I was still able to get a bill passed and signed into law in my first 6 months in Harrisburg, which my colleagues will know that's a feat in of itself. But I have worked really hard to make sure that women are respected in Harrisburg, because it took a long time. I think the first 12 months of my time in Harrisburg, I was asked whose staffer, intern, or secretary I was by House security, by House members, by the Secretary of Agriculture. And he didn't mean to offend me, but he did greatly, because I'm the rep and people aren't used to seeing a young woman at the table. But I think it's really important that we're there because we start talking about issues that matter, right? I co-founded the Student Debt Caucus with a Republican colleague, and she's another young woman, and we work really well together on that issue. But it was the first time student debt was really talked about. And I was so proud that the next budget cycle, we finally saw Governor Wolf addressing that issue because we made it such a big deal. Now, when I was asked by Maria Donatucci and Rep Bullock and Rep Shusterman to co-sponsor equal pay, I was so excited to do that. And there's a lot of reasons why it's important that we bring it here to Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, Donna, it was passed in 1959. It was amended in 1967. And when they amended the equal pay law in Pennsylvania, they
I just put
tried
that
to
in the
make
chat
it
too.
yeah, they tried to make it so less people qualify. So when they passed that amendment, it basically said that now women are protected by the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, and that only women in Pennsylvania that work very few jobs are covered by the Pennsylvania law. And it's more important than ever. Here in PA, as of 2019, we have 600,000 family households headed by women. 28% of those families have incomes that fall below the poverty level. The other statistic that I find alarming is recently a report came out that showed how Pennsylvania women rank in comparison to women in other states. And the one thing that stuck out to me is that in other states, women are set to achieve equal pay by the year 2058. Here in Pennsylvania, we're not set to get there until the year 2072.
Wait.
Cannot.
Say this again.
Right now, according to the Women's Equal Pay Project or Women's Law Project, women and other American women will not achieve equal pay until the year 2058. But Pennsylvania women will not achieve equal pay until the year 2072. And we are working together to make sure that that is not a reality and that we actually pass equal pay in Pennsylvania. Last night, I had a constituent sort of trolling me, and he does this a lot, I know who it is, asking why next week on Equal Pay Day, Reps Shusterman, Bullock, myself, and Tina Davis, another woman in our leadership, she's the secretary, are having a press conference to talk about equal pay and to bring light to it, especially in Women's History Month. And the person wanted to know why we didn't have any Republican reps joining us. The problem is they're not interested in joining us. We sent our co-sponsorship memo for this bill on December 9th, 2020. It is now March 18th, and we have yet to have a Republican sign on to join us as a co-sponsor. And for the last 10 years, Maria Donatucci was working to try to get this bill passed and couldn't even get it brought up for a vote. So that tells me that the majority either doesn't care about the pay gap or they don't believe it. Either of those options are not acceptable. And I'm really excited that we're continuing to see growth with women coming to Harrisburg, but we need more. Recently, there's a special election seat up in for Senate in Lackawanna and Luzerne County. Senator John Blake resigned. And the names that were being tossed were two of our male colleagues. And granted, I like Marty and Kyle. I think they're great. But I reached out to my sweet mate, Bridget Kozorowski, another female state rep who's serving on the COVID-19 task force, to say, Bridget, why aren't you running? Don't you live in this district? She said she was told to wait her turn and that she had young children, so it couldn't possibly be her time to be a state senator. And that answer is not acceptable. I'm now trying to—
I echo that, Jen. I called Bridget as well. That is completely unacceptable. We cannot have that going on. Bridget would make an incredible senator, and we need her to step up to those opportunities today or in the future.
You know, one of the reasons that Represent got started is that kind of comment is echoed across the state. You know, I always talk about the fact that we had to start supporting women running in primaries because they were told it was not their turn, and they were told it was not their turn by Democratic leadership in the various counties. And it's not your turn, just sit and wait. I got a guy for that seat. And that was kind of the common comment. And I always say that Pennsylvania didn't get so bad in representation without the Democrats being fully complicit in the issue too. And what you're talking about is a Democratic Party structure that is telling Bridget not to run. Shameful.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And as you know, I've recently married, and my husband and I are trying now to have children. And whenever I talk about that, I hear, how can you possibly have a baby while you're a state representative? As if my husband couldn't help be a co-parent, and as if a lot of other women haven't figured it out before me. But I'm not going to fall to those biases, and I'm going to continue fighting. As Donna said, when we get there, we push the door open to bring more women behind us. I am helping to support female candidates. I'm recruiting them. I'm helping them fundraise and teaching them what I know about Harrisburg. And we will continue doing that until we see true equity of female representation that really would match the population of women in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to keep pushing for equal pay. I'm going to keep pushing to get women elected and to support strong women leaders like Donna and Melissa and Joanna, our fierce floor leader who is really giving the Republicans a run for her money. And I'm very proud to have supported her and continue to support her. So I want to thank Represent and this wonderful group of people who are joining us this morning, who care about this issue and who support us, because it's not easy being a female candidate in Pennsylvania. But I think it's really important that we continue to do the work. So thank you very much for having me this morning.
So thank you, Jennifer. And Christine, before you move on, because there's a lot of chatter in the chat.
And that's what I was just going to go to. If you ladies want to comment on some of the things that are in the chat, people are asking, what do I do today?
Yeah, so that's where I'm going to get to. A couple of things. One, just to echo on Jennifer's comment around childcare and child raising, until we have sort of equal share of that responsibility, that also plays into the impact of equal pay, because job interruption is real for women, and it skyrocketed during COVID because women often leave the workplace to care for our children, to care for our elderly loved ones, and for others in our family. And so we need men to step up in that space so that it is not, you know, the traditional space where women leave work to handle those care responsibilities, because job interruption impacts equal pay and it spreads the gender gap. But what can we do about this particular bill? It was noted in the chat. We are in the minority as Democrats. And the way our calendar works is that bill gets into a committee, but it is the majority chairperson who decides whether we even talk about that bill, or it can just sit there and never see the light of day, which has been happening for the last decade or so with the equal pay bills that we've been seeing introduced. I don't want to be here 10 years later introducing this bill. So number one, we need to elect more Democrats and hopefully more women Democrats to the state House and Senate so that we can move the bill future. But today, maybe we can push it a little further along by first calling the Republican chairman of the Labor and Industry Committee, who is Jim Cox. And maybe you don't live in this district, but maybe you have family members. Maybe you have a sorority or fraternity sister or brother that lives in that district. Someone from some other club or society that you're a part of. Call your friends across the Commonwealth that live in these districts and tell them to call their state rep and senator to encourage them to push these bills through the committee. So I would take a look not only at Jim Cox, but the other Republican members of the Labor and Industry Committee, and you can find that on the PA House website. I did put the bill in the chat, so you can click on the link and actually see the bill itself. You can, you know, just right now it's just pushing that through and raising the issue in communities outside of the Southeast. Because equal pay isn't just about a Southeast issue. It's not just happening in Philly. Trust me, in the most rural parts of the Commonwealth, women are not getting their fair share or their equal pay for the work that they are putting in those communities. And so we do have,
Donna, we do have people from, we've got a number of people from the Allegheny County on the call. We have, I know Lois Herr from Central PA is on. I've seen, and we'll have Claudette Williams say a few words in a few minutes. Claudette's in Monroe County. So
yes.
We do have, so Claudette, I'm warning you. So, but we do have people from other parts of the state on this call, but we all have friends.
Yes, we all have friends and cousins in them and family all across the Commonwealth. Call those folks, tell them about the information you heard on this call, share the links that I put in the chat. I did share both the bill, I shared the Economic Policy Institute story about Black women in essential work and the pay disparities. So use that information and go out there and just share with folks that equal pay is still a real issue. It is a real issue, and you know why? Because families who rely on that income they are the ones who are being shorted, right? Especially because the increasing number of female head of households. Female head of households are a significant portion of the families in our state, in our country. And if they are not making or bringing home the bacon that they should be bringing home, then their children don't eat. their children don't get an opportunity to go to soccer or participate in extracurricular activities. Their children don't get an opportunity to, pay off or get an opportunity to go to different schools or other things. Those women don't get to pay off their student loan debt that's Jennifer is still talking about. I'm still paying off 30 years later, but we don't get to pay off that student loan debt in a sooner time so that we can then free up our disposable income to care for our families. So there are so many issues here that sort of overlay and interact with how much women are bringing home for their work. And so anything that you can do to push that bill through committee, even if it's just to raise a little bit of noise this year, and we'll keep pushing until we get that majority that we are all working so hard to get.
Yes, and I want to comment that we also have to see something Represent does, women in everywhere. I've been pushing back with the administration and my own leadership that board seats that have to do with economics, that are sitting next to the CEOs of large businesses. We need women put there. Women cannot only be on boards that have to do with childcare or have to do with caring for our seniors. And when there is an announcement, we are all working hard to make sure the economy comes back and that our small businesses, which tend to be primarily run by women, are receiving relief, that they are being heard. And when that relief comes, what I have noticed is they have 2 or 3 male reps standing next to the governor. And I don't spend a lot of my time speaking to the governor's staff. I used to be an entrepreneur. I'm used to kind of working alone in many ways. Well, they heard from me. They heard from me through my leadership, through me, through colleagues I could call and say, you need to make this call on my behalf. It is inexcusable that there are no women announcing the fact that we're bringing economic relief back to Pennsylvania. So I think there is this perception that women can be at the table if we're talking about childcare, or we're talking about senior care, or something that is traditionally what women care about, but that we're not at the table when we talk about a new transportation route that actually would help our care workers, or sitting there and just talking about the hardcore economics of what's going on in Pennsylvania. I believe women need to be there, because then our perspective will be heard and implemented if we're sitting there. So board seats are my little pet peeve, because people forget about that. And the minute you forget about equity in those places, they gotcha. So you're looking in one direction. Well, you have to be looking in every direction to make sure there are women representing.
I want to address a comment that was just put in the chat by Marcy about if there's value in combining strategy with minimum wage and equal pay. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to another strong female colleague of ours, Representative Patty Kim from Dauphin County. Patty is also a vice chair of the Southeast delegation, and she is doing that right now. She's running a campaign called Women Supporting Women. And we're focusing on minimum wage and why that's a women's issue. And we're tying it in next week to equal pay and why both of those are women issues. And I also just want to mention, yesterday, Patty and I wrote a letter together to the Asian American community in Pennsylvania to acknowledge the hate crime that happened in Georgia. And I'm disgusted that the news and the Georgia officials are saying that it wasn't a hate crime. It was, he had a bad day and has issues with sex addiction. No, that was a hate crime, and we need to call it like it is. And we collectively need to do more to support Asian Americans right now as they are being targeted with hate because of the former president's vile remarks about the COVID-19 pandemic and where it came from. And so there are a lot of us that are working strategically together. And I would say that's different. Our male colleagues don't do that as much. They're more worried about their ego. Whereas female representatives are more collaborative. Even our Republican female members are more likely to work with us than the male ones are. And the chief clerk said to me once that women are better legislators, and it's because we're willing to compromise and work together. And he's supposed to be the, not engaging in politics on the floor, but he was, I think, finally being honest about the reality of our situation in Harrisburg. So I just wanted to mention that, because Patty Kim is doing a really good job taking up the mantle to fight for minimum wage.
So here's
What I like about this conversation is that you're all talking about all of these issues are women's issues.
Yes.
I've been trying to be pretty outspoken lately, surprising for me. And I was recently interviewed by some newspaper and they said, well, what issues do you think women are particularly good at? And I just had to keep my tone steady. And I said, all issues are women's issues. Economic issues are women's issues. You can't just say, oh, well, women will be good on abortion and education. Women are going to be good on transportation because we have to get to jobs and we have to get our children to jobs. Women are going to be good on education and on student loan debt because we have debts. Women are going to be good on equal pay for equal rights. Women are going to be good in the environment and what our children and what water we're drinking and what we're exposed to. All issues are women's issues, and women can represent us well in everything.
And as Jen mentioned, and I think you've noticed from this call, we can get a lot more done if nobody cares about who got the credit. And what you heard on this call is that we have named several of our colleagues and the work that they have done because we work together and we uplift each other's voices as women. And we understand that that work happens and we can get it done if we don't care about who gets the credit at the end of the day. And that's huge. It's really big.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the male colleagues just don't do that. And I had one little story I forgot to mention. I had a bill last session that I wrote and ran out of the House unanimously to increase donations we can make to the Veterans Trust Fund. It went to the Senate and died. A couple weeks ago, I had a Senate staffer come up to me and say, this senator really liked your bill, so he introduced it. We're going to pass it. And that's the way it's going to become law. A male senator, Republican senator, who won't work with me at all to get that done together, despite it being legislation I literally wrote and he took. So I will take credit for that when it comes back into the House, and I will act like we work together. But the reality is we didn't. They see good ideas and they steal it. And that really is something that happens a lot. I'm sure it's happened to Donna in her time in Harrisburg. Melissa, we've seen it happen to as well. And that's something that they do often to discredit us.
I think we have to remember that women are often called petty. They get so emotional. And my experience in Harrisburg is that men are incredibly emotional and incredibly petty. And it's almost rendered me speechless. And now I'm trying to be louder about it because it's completely unprofessional. I've worked in startup companies. I've worked with Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies. And I've also run my own digital firm, and never in my life have I experienced such a level of being completely unprofessional. I had a bill that came out of committee unanimously, and I went to the speaker about making sure it could go to the floor, and he lied directly to my face. Now you're going to ask me, how do I know he lied? I'm a mom. I know that face. And I had to say, you're lying. Just give me the one person who's having an issue with this, or the 2 people, or the 10. Give me the opportunity to speak to them. This is about new economic verticals that could keep our workforce here in Pennsylvania. Explain, it was a Republican bill years ago. Explain to me who, and they won't. So there, I get it, it's politics, but we need to break through that. I too had a bill that was about donating expired food, and it was passed through by a kind of non-masking Republican, young Republican. And, I went up to him and said, congratulations. That was a bill that I worked hard on, and I'm really glad to see it, move across the finish line so people can donate to their local food banks, he was not wearing a mask, kind of sweating a little bit, a little scared of me because people know how vocal I am about wearing masks. But we had a moment, and I hope in the future I could approach him for a favor. Do I have a lot of faith that could happen? No, but we can at least try.
And you're doing it for the good of the Commonwealth and the people of Pennsylvania. And then you go into Jen or Donna's office or somebody else's office and you slam the door and go, do you know what that just did or just said? Because that was my career also.
Melissa and I vent
we've
a
got
lot.
some great comments in the chat. We'll send out a note after this. As always, all of our, we record all of our calls, and then the video will be available for you to send to your friends and family to say, do you know what I just heard? Do you know what is, I love Lois, Lois Herr is about my age, she's got, this has been going on for 50 years. I've heard the same comment. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And just to solidify that these things are going on, Claudette, are you still here? Can we turn Claudette on? Okay, Claudette, you're now a co-host. Claudette, if you would just share, Claudette has 1,000 stories. She was a candidate that we've supported in Monroe County. She did not win, but Claudette has a great story of, Jen was talking about being called young lady and a few other things. Claudette, could you share your Missy comment to me?
Christine, when you call my name, I got very emotional. And if you see me wiping my face, it's not because anything is wrong with my eyes. I've just been crying, bawling my eyes out. You spoke about—
Claudette's rank in the military was Sergeant Major. In a lot of her military experiences, I bet she didn't get emotional. When you go at her personally, this is what happens. This is what happens to all of us.
No, I didn't. I'm strong and I stand strong and, and lead my troops, Afghanistan, Iraq, and, you name it, because, you're that leader. But coming home and realizing what you had to deal with. And, I was recently removed as president of my borough council. And one of the statements that they made was, I'm the one that bring the rest of them by diversifying the council. I was called an NC, a very derogatory word, and many racial slurs. I was told I was disruptive by not celebrating the appointment of a vice president, a white woman. And the person who they now put as president referred to us, he was the one that referred to me as, hey, you Missy, during my campaign. He's also the one that now referred to us as, what do you think the Black people will say? When he's asking about, decisions that are made in the council, what do you think the Black people, how do you think the Black people will vote? What do you think the Black people will say? They are now, have isolated us 5 against 2. And we are not even included in the email. Okay, but when I was called that NC word, and we tried, and this was a worker of the borough, and we tried to remove that person, it was questioned. And they appointed someone as vice president now that had on his post all these, I'm a racist Republican, and all these negative comments. That is how our borough is. And my daughter made a statement. She said, Mom, you need to move. I've heard this saying, move, but I am not running. I am not gonna run. My daughter says, Mom, I feel like you're on an island by yourself. Okay. And I'm gonna stay on that island by myself if that's how she feels until the wave comes in, because we need to do something. We need to do something. I know what it is to work from minimum wage, raise 4 children, robbing Peter to pay Paul, deciding, am I paying the light bill this month or am I paying the water? Which one is more important? And it's either this week or next week. I know what it is to struggle, but I'm not letting any of those things stop me. And what you ladies are doing in Harrisburg, I commend you and I support what you're doing. But I need people to look at us in the rural area, what we're dealing with. Just to gain that leadership to even help our community, you have to submit yourself to all these things. And the publicly, they're not even considerate. The mayor, who's a Democrat, who joined force with the Republican told me that I should be removed because I do not answer his call when he calls me. You do not have the right to chuckle when I speak to you. Like I have absolutely no right because of who I am and because of the color of my skin. Find my place, stay in my place. And that's pretty much what is going on here in the Poconos in Monroe County. And I have nobody here. I don't have a legislator here that's standing with us. You know, the legislator that is in my area, because he did not win my area, he has not been in my area or speak up in my area in over 2 years. The other legislators that are in their district, they're not crossing over. They're not coming into my area to help. So we're pretty much on our own. I'm it, you know? So I am asking for support. And at the end of the day, there's so much going on. But I'm not going to run and I'm not going to quit. I can do that. But that's not what I fought for when I sacrificed serving for 30 years on the battlefield in Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait. That's not what I fought for. I fought for freedom, where we're talking about equal pay for women, right? Equal rights. Those are the things that I fought for. And I will stay in the battlefield and I'll stay in the fight. And I'm asking for your support. And to remember that I am out there and I believe in the same thing that we would believe in. And what Representative PA is pushing, that is what we are fighting for. You know, and I would love to hear get some support and hear from people saying that I'm with you and I'll stand with you.
Thank you for that.
We're with you. And we need to redraw the lines of your district, keeping you in the district. But we need you as a fighter. I mean, you are amazing, and your story never was told the way it should have been told. And this is another example of how even our political arm is not listening to women. Claudette's story is incredible, and her ability to continue to fight. One, we have to make it easier for her, redraw the lines, really leaning into Claudette, really leaning in, not other men around her, but her. And then two, what I just put in the chat, send her a donation. And three, she needs to message the way authentically to who she is, not to some big statewide or countrywide Democratic platform.
Thank you very much. We're at 9:30, so I think it was important that Claudette finished for us with our speakers for today, because we talked about 3 strong women who are fighting the fight in Harrisburg. We're talking about this being 2021, and these issues are still being fought. And then we heard from the field as to what's going on in a borough in Pennsylvania. This is 2021. These things should not be happening. We have 3 strong representatives who we were proud to help elect who are in Harrisburg. We just need more. So let's go back to my slides. And you can find Claudette's, maybe if you put in Claudette's Act Blue number, Jamie, into the chat, because a couple of people were asking for that. But it's more sending letters and being supported. So I just want to finish with the fact that this is Women's Herstory Month, telling her story. And we did hear her story from 4 different women today. Through the generosity of a couple of our donors, we're having a 2-for-1 match this month on new donations up to $10,000. We're making great progress on getting to that $10,000, and we're asking for any new money that comes in. This is important that you help us support this work. Support, represent, get involved with us, volunteer. We have another Women's Herstory Month event coming up on March 31st. It's going to feature Representative Morgan Cephas, another strong woman that Represent has supported, who another Black woman that Represent is proud to have supported, who's working on a number of issues related to women's health. And on April 16th, Margot Davidson is going to speak with us. She's head of the State Government Committee. Again, we have not in the past had women heading up some of the committees on the minority chairs, and Margot is, and she's going to talk about election laws. You know, one of the big issues facing Pennsylvania is there's going to be a lot of stimulus money coming into Pennsylvania. And guess what? Our legislature is going to get to figure out how to allocate it. A number of states are now complaining that they want to use the money from the American Recovery Act to meet budget gaps. But there's so much that needs to be done in Pennsylvania. And it's going to be, much of it will be allocated through the Pennsylvania legislature. And these are the kind of people who are going to be making those decisions. And we need your support. So thank you all. We'll be sending out a link to and let you know that we've done it. Watch our website for the link to this chat. I love the comments that have come in, and thank you all very much for joining us this morning. It's reinvigorated me into the value of the work that we're doing, and I hope it's done the same for all of you. So thank you. And thank you to Melissa, Donna, and Jen for being with us.